Hello, everyone, and welcome to Burn the Ship, the podcast that helps entrepreneurs go all in on their business, and we introduce them to professionals that can do so. Today, we have a special guest, Miss Liz Tarquin with Case Consultants. How you doing today, Liz?
Oh, doing great. Thanks for having me on the show.
Good, good. We definitely appreciate you coming on, and we look forward to you sharing a little bit about your journey and where you are now. And we understand that time is one of our most valuable resources. So we'll go ahead and jump into things. Liz, tell us a little bit about your story.
I end up in Hawaii after a 30-year career, having bounced through Washington, D.C. to begin with. Immigrated to New Zealand about 20 years ago, spent some time in Australia, showed up here about 10 years ago. And I've actually, throughout this entire experience, enjoyed a really interesting and eclectic career path. But today I'm an entrepreneur, owning my own company, which is actually based in North Carolina. So that presents some other interesting challenges. How do you manage and grow a company when that is located in a different spot from where you are? But I use some of that, where I am and the differences that I can bring and the perspectives I can bring to actually add more flavor and help my business grow.
Awesome, awesome. Now, you said that it was 30 years, sounds like in a corporate environment, and then you moved on, or tell us a little bit about the 30 years and then how you transitioned into your entrepreneur venture.
Well, I'm revealing my age. I'm definitely square in the middle Gen X. But
Okay.
actually, I started my career. I got a degree in marketing and international business, of all things, but came out of college during a recession. So had to figure out what I want to do next. Had some computer skills I picked up, so I found a job working in software development. And so the first 10 years of my career, I spent doing software development, programming. It kind of migrated into things like information architecture and system architecture because along the way, I found out I could talk to the clients, understand what their business needs were, and then translate them back down to specifications that then I could, I could direct teams to build applications to solve those business problems. Um, did about 10 years of that, and then had a baby and decided to move to New Zealand. Um,
Okay. Okay.
most of the times, and especially when I was working as a software developer, there was mostly for small businesses. So I actually really have centered my entire career on helping small to mid-sized companies who find themselves in this position of, needing to be able to hire people who can really do things quickly and effectively, but maybe can't have a full-time staff to do that work that just sits and does stuff. After I left the US and moved to New Zealand, I actually continued to work for US based companies. So I
Okay.
feel like I was the OG of teleworking because this was in the very early stages. We didn't have Zooms and we didn't have, Google Meets or anything like that. So it was all really email, occasional phone calls, and just a lot, that got the work done. But what ended up happening is through word of mouth, I built a healthy and a healthy consultancy, helping companies with their capture, understanding they could build marketing assets, and then mostly writing proposals primarily for federal work across a
Okay.
lot of different agencies. So I did
Okay.
that for about 10 years, built a nice portfolio, and then as oftentimes as we do, we decided to move back to the US. So relocated to Hawaii and went to go work for one of my clients. So I went from kind of working for a lot of companies to working for just one company. I helped them win a big contract for NOAA fisheries, and that's how I got my early dose of marine science.
Okay.
And helped that company build into from about 35 people when I started to 550 in less than 5 years. Um,
Okay. Nice.
Mostly based around science work.
Okay.
That was another major shift. I went from kind of doing mostly IT work, mostly IT proposal writing type stuff, into the world of marine and ocean and coastal science.
That's a big contrast. That's a big difference there.
Big learning curve.
Right.
I like to joke that like I didn't know anything about fish except how to cook it when I started.
I'm sure they love that with you working with fisheries. With that, inside of that position, and you trying to figure out what's new about this particular industry, what are some of the learning curves, or what are some of the things you did to try to learn more about this new industry in marine?
Well, I've always had an interest in science. And so, to begin with, the job was so much fun because here I was suddenly able to work with some of the top scientists in marine science in the field. If you're not familiar with NOAA, this is the part of the U.S. government that deals with fisheries management and protected species. So it's a couple different things. It's salmon rights, it's oyster farming, it's marine mammal protection, North Atlantic right whales to spinner dolphins in Hawaii to coral reefs, huge, wide, and vast subject matter. So every week it was something different and something new. And I kind of felt privileged because I was just the business enabler on the other side. Like my job was to make the science streamlined so the scientists could do their work. And then and all the paperwork on the back end that made the science happen, that was my job. Um,
Yeah.
so, to me, what I did is I leaned into my strengths, right? I'm not the scientist. I could learn about the science, but my strengths were hustle and integrity and competence. So, how could I make the day-to-day work of getting all of the invoicing and status reporting and stuff like that, how could I make that as streamlined as possible? So, you know, I think it's easy to get frustrated when you try to enter into a new field and you know very little, and you can convince yourself or you can start to beat yourself up for not knowing much, but you're confusing experience with knowledge. And so what I decided to do is kind of do what I've done in a lot of my career is make a good living out of doing the things that people don't want to do and then make like clearing the path so those people who are really passionate about what they love, have a clearer path to being able to do that. And then
Seems like you were streamlining processes and just helping the red tape get out of the way so they can actually do what they know how to do.
right. And then also understanding, sort of the motivative things of people in general. So I think the people aspect is oftentimes lost in our transactional business world. But my job was really also to be a liaison between my employees, many of whom were contract employees with the US government, and our government client. So I needed to be able to understand the motivations of each of these different scientists. Some of them were very introverted, some of them very extroverted. And then also, how can I help them, get through their day a little bit easier? And then also, how can I recognize issues or problems and then know enough about what they're doing in order to be able to help in some way?
Yeah,
Uh,
help them to move forward. Now with it, you said you were helping a bunch of clients. Then you decided to go work with one client. Is that when Case was created, or is it after that?
so funny enough, Case has been in business since 2012, but I'm not a founder. Uh,
Okay.
So I can come to be the CEO and owner of Case by a completely different path. So after I was working with this company in marine science, and I bounced to another company, kind of doing some of the same things, mostly because I like small businesses. And as businesses get to a certain point, to me, they take on different things that I don't enjoy as much. Um, so anyway, the opportunity came to basically buy Case from a career scientist who was retiring. She just was ready to not do this anymore, but wanted to hand over what she had built to somebody who she felt would be a good steward of what she started and then take it in new directions. So
Yes.
I took over Case in April of 2023. The timing was right for me to go back to being an entrepreneur again and not working for somebody, but working for myself. And then
Mm-hmm.
testing out a few more theories about what it would take to grow a business that, I'm hoping that people both want to work for and want to work with. Um,
Okay. Okay. Now, tell us a little bit about what you are helping business owners with Case. Like, tell us what you do. Who's a good target for you? Who's a good referral partner? Share with us about your business.
so Case has expanded basically the domains in which I've worked. So I mentioned that I've worked very, very much intensely in marine and ocean and coastal science. Case has a history of working in climate and weather science. So now the company kind of spans all of the what we call kind of the wet and the dry side, even though it all involves water. um,
Yes. Yes.
and
Makes sense.
and NOAA is one of our major customers. The EPA is another customer. We're taking on some NASA work here pretty soon. So we do a lot of work with the federal government, but we also work with commercial clients. And yeah, kind of again, repeating what I saw as a dearth when I was an independent contractor working with small to mid-sized companies. Case's primary target are those small to mid-sized companies kind of stuck in the middle of the supply chain, trying to figure out how are things like climate change affecting my business. But they're big enough to be able to hire us to help them get through some problems or understand these things. but too small to have full-time staff. So we are the jump start, we're the SWAT team that goes into companies, and they can span actually across industries. So we've been working a little bit in retail, looking at, working with some other companies, some of it connected to marine science, but primarily working now with companies who are concerned about what climate is doing to their business, but don't know where to start, don't know how to even interpret that information, or especially when they've got maybe a larger company they're supplying is asking for things that they don't know even where to begin to get that information.
Right.
So that's a direction that we're going in, as well as continuing to build our prospering, government sector business.
Of your business. Yeah, it was interesting because in my mind, when you told me, you're working with marine, you're working with climate, my first thought was you just strictly deal with agricultural. But in your description, you said you also work with retail as well. How does that climate affect them in that manner? I know if I have a farm, how climate can control it. But in the retail aspect, tell us a little bit about how you can help when it comes to climate there.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, and retail is a very, very broad, term as well, right? Um, but if you think about it, if you've got things like, it's getting hotter in places, it's getting drier in places, it's getting wetter in places, all of these things are affecting investments in infrastructure, understanding how they are getting their supplies. So if you're a shop, and you put your business up on a big hill, so it's going to be immune from flooding, but if the roads that are leading to your shop are ones that are now jeopardized based on something having to do with climate, your business is going to suffer. Um,
Okay.
the other thing is, how climate is also affecting how different organizations are stocking shelves. So, picking on heat again, if it's getting hotter in places, people are going to buy more water. So if you're a retail outlet, you might need to be stocking more water. But now you need to worry about, well, how is supply going to get to me? And, I need to have backup supply. So who are going to be the top suppliers so that if for some reason everybody else is wanting more water, how can I make sure that I'm stocking my shelves effectively? I mean, that's a very broad and blunt,
Yeah.
thing. And then on the marine side, we're seeing like, we talk about agriculture. Aquaculture is a nascent and starting to become more and more important to the U.S. economy. And there's two sides of that. There's growing fish. I mean, we're all pretty probably familiar with farmed salmon. It's
Hmm.
the punching bag for all of us. But there's other fish, and there's definitely shellfish that are farmed. And then, I think the thing that's going to save us all is seaweed.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
so, but when you're thinking about anything biological, climate is going to affect how that grows, growing seasons. And we're seeing fish showing up in different places. We're seeing, stuff blooming at the wrong time of the year. And then that
Okay.
has knock-on effects for the overall ecosystem. So part of what my company does is work on models, look at, forecasts for what's coming up, and then help businesses understand these shifts so that they can build them into their business models and then hopefully themselves be successful.
Awesome. Awesome. Now, the premise of the podcast in itself is to help entrepreneurs who have gotten going and maybe they've run into some sort of issue. There's so many different things that can slow a business owner down because they're most of the time they're just great at what it is that they do, but they don't know all the business processes. With what you do, there are many, many different variables. Can you please share with us some of those skills that you have acquired and nurtured over time that has helped you to flow with change and adapt to the different variables that are out there?
Well, sure. So, I think being versatile is really important. And I appreciate the people who are really about one thing. I kind of wish I had that focus because I like a lot of stuff. Um, but I will say, having picked up some IT skills early and understanding how data moves around, and then understanding how you can use technology to increase efficiencies, and not just about buying a system and then sticking it into the corner and looking at it. It's like really even understanding how you can use something as simple as a spreadsheet and connecting spreadsheets to really improve even little small micro efficiencies, because every little efficiency counts. So I
Okay.
think that from a skill set perspective over time, having that knowledge and then constantly seeking ways in which even incrementally I can achieve some little tiny bit of benefit for my business in terms of a little slightly better process or a little bit less redundancy has really paid off in large ways. Um, that also comes down to just planning, like planning for growth. And I think a lot of business entrepreneurs don't do that very well. They go racing off, they close a lot of business, but then they haven't actually thought through the infrastructure moves they need to make in order to support the business. And the investments they need to make and how that's going to impact the basically the cost of doing business. Um,
Yes.
and I mean, so I think those are some things that make businesses fail is that failure to plan and a failure to understand how information moves around and how they can make best use of that information. And then what's important and what's not important, because we all have limited energy. And
Yes.
um, wasting energy, wasting time is a deal killer.
Yeah, you can tell your software background how processes are a big focus for you. It seems like it doesn't matter what industry that you're in or what, if you're working with someone, working for someone, or back working for yourself, it's been a point of emphasis that you've shared multiple times that you need to have your processes in order. So that is a great tip for everyone to hear today. And as we talk about planning in itself, tell us a little bit about the picture or the big plan for Case Consultant. Well, tell us a little bit about what your future looks like.
Well, having taken over a company as opposed to starting something, it's a little bit different. A different perspective that I've got. So I feel like I'm renovating a house. So
Okay.
part of the journey has been understanding what the company was and where it has been, and then where I've been, and then figuring out how to make all of those dovetail together neatly into something that is a future vision. But one of the key things that I have tried to work on in the last year is understanding what my values are. So setting those into place first, because no matter what the company decides to do, that those cannot change. Um, and so like, for me, that's I have an acronym, I call it ITCH. It's, integrity, tenacity, competence, and hustle, right? So
Okay.
everybody I want to
Okay.
hire needs to have that, and all the things we do have to kind of mold, fit into that framework. So um, where's the company going to go? I know for me, I'm not interested in super fast growth. That might sound like counterintuitive, but I want thoughtful growth because I like my company to maintain that reputation of the company that people want to work with and people want to work for. And so I'm looking at being very careful and selective about how I grow. Um, and then continuously revising and looking at are we violating our value system? But definitely staying within the realm of environmental science, understanding, how to, how things like climate change are affecting businesses, but being open to being able to work with lots of businesses in lots of different industries, but bringing in that kind of science and technology focus to help them do things better. Um,
Gotcha. Gotcha. Well, that makes a lot of sense. Now that you've shared with us the framework of what it is that you do and how you're helping others, we always like the entrepreneurs that are watching to understand that yes, you do have your business, but then you also have your life, your Liz. We got Liz, not just Case. So let's just say that you have gotten to that growth that you want, that smart growth, not quick growth, and things are going along well, and you're just helping all the fisheries, helping all the climates control people that need help. What is it that Liz would do outside of helping with those things?
well, aside from just maybe pouring coffee all day long, I mean, I'm an avid outdoors person and hiker.
Hmm.
And so if I were able to just put a backpack on and go, that's probably what I would do. I've yet in my career figured out how someone will pay me to do that, so I have to work in order to be able to afford to do that. Um,
Hmm.
but the thing that I've recognized, and I've gone through periods of working, periods of near martyrdom working. My personality is such that I actually really enjoy work, and I will work very hard to get what I want. But
Hmm.
I think for every entrepreneur, having time, and I've been really focusing much more on building some boredom into my life. And not that your brain's not working, but if
Yeah.
you're working all the time, you're not thinking big thoughts. So for me,
Makes
when I'm
sense.
hiking or I go out and spend some time outside or walk on the beach or whatever, Um, I try not to do thinking. I try to put some music in my ears and just like let my brain rest because that's also when a lot of the best ideas start to surface. So I think building resting time, however you do it, however you can take your mind off your business, is really important for any entrepreneur because that's how you're going to keep the energy fresh too. Um,
Yeah.
there's no end of work. There's no end of things you can do, but that's not necessarily productive.
Yeah,
Um,
that is true. That is true because, like you said, when you're taking your hikes and you're walking on the beach, which is easy for you with you being in Hawaii there, you have the opportunity to work on the business instead of being in the business. I try to share that with a lot of my referral partners and the people that I work with. Yes, it's important to get the task done inside of the business, but you have to be able to see above it so you can, work on the business in itself. So that is a good point for you to relax, and I like how you do it with the hiking and the walking. As far as for the people here that are listening to us today, how is it that they can get in contact with you if they needed to learn more about your services or if they just needed to have a talk on something that you've shared today?
Well, first of all, I'm just really open to talking to people. The thing that I find has also been a hallmark of my career is networking.
Okay.
You can't have enough people in your Rolodex, and you just never know when meeting somebody is going to create a business opportunity or even just a personal opportunity. And I've seen it in my career over the 3 decades or so I've been doing this. Even people who I haven't talked to in years suddenly pop up. Especially when you live in a place like Hawaii, people tend to pop up a lot. Um, I would say it's getting in touch with me. I'm on LinkedIn, so that's one way. Also, my website is another way of just, reaching out, and then email. These are kind of three easy ways to get in touch with me. I do have a Facebook page. I use it very rarely, and I'm too Gen X to do Instagram, but I'm trying. Uh, I would encourage anybody. I'm very happy to talk to anyone who is interested in just, having a new contact, wants to bounce ideas. Sometimes the best ideas happen when you do just open up the floor and start chatting. Uh,
Makes sense. We'll put all those things in the tags and in the description where they can get in contact with you. And we truly do appreciate you coming on today. And to honor that appreciation, we always like to give you the last word. So if you don't mind, looking to the camera, sharing with the audience whatever your final thoughts are.
well, I like to bring up something, basically from well deep into my past. But it's also been a guiding light for me for most of my career, and it's still valid today. And so when I was in high school, senior year, you're supposed to have a senior quote. And so I dug up this one that is been attributed to a number of people, but it's usually attributed to anonymous. And it's, you can't change the direction of the wind, but you can adjust your sails to always reach your destination. And so for me, having that is a reminder of, just adapt. Like, you can figure stuff out. Like, I always have to remind myself I'm smart. I may not know everything about a subject matter, but I can go find somebody who does. And of course, I know how to Google. But having that confidence that, you know what, you can figure out how to get to the end point that you're reaching. And just plow through some of those some of the blocks and the bottlenecks, but have confidence that you will reach that destination if you work hard enough at it.
Excellent. Those are wise words. Thank you so much for coming on with us today, Liz. We truly do appreciate your insights, and we really hope people reach out to you. You're a wealth of knowledge on multiple subjects. So thank you so much for coming on today.
Nope, appreciate the opportunity.
All right, you guys, thank you so much for listening. We appreciate it, and we'll see you soon. Thanks.